I guess I don't need to introduce the people, because you've all seen them. So I think we're just going to jump straight into questions. And I think one of the last one we got in here is the most interesting one. And that is, I'm going to ask everyone in the panel regarding tabs or spaces.
I use them both. I'm a rebel.
You didn't.
I actually have a Git attributes file which fixes those things for me.
Oh, okay, so both. Yeah, okay.
Spaces or I don't take the project.
Shawn has a set mind, I like that, okay.
I don't use either, I use Mongolian white space characters.
Yeah, never get on a project with her.
Yeah, I'm also voting for neither. I mean, it's just a waste of bytes, isn't it? Like, why don't you just write your code in a pre-minified form? It'll be much more efficient.
Okay, none?
Should I do like a flame war now and like tabs, only tabs? Tabs looking at like 4 characters of spaces or something? Yeah, no, I agree. It's, I hate when it, like I do both, but it always like fucks everything up. So I really want something that just like lints it all over and like decides. What do you do? What's the answer?
Depends on the day. Literally, no, I think I use whatever my IDE gives me. Basically, you're on the line, you press enter, it will tab me or space me or whatever. What does Visual Studio do? Default in Visual Studio? Anybody know? 4 spaces? I do spaces. I'm on the side of spaces. Okay, what else have we got here?
We aren't going to talk about the... We talked about tabs and spaces, but we didn't talk about the amount of indentation, which I think is even more important.
Okay.
4.
4, yeah, I thought 4 was just standard. Everybody did 4.
I'm trying to convert everyone to 2.
Ooh.
That's compact and clear.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the important things we're talking about. It's, my personal opinion is if that is the biggest problem we have in our jobs, finding out if you use tabs or spaces, we have it pretty good.
We do have it pretty good, actually.
We do, and we really do. I got a question for Tess. Okay. Straight on for you, and it's actually, do you need PDB files for analyzing CLR stacks?
So for .NET, not really, but oftentimes you do need to look at the native stacks, and in that case, yes, you do need PDBs. And you do need PDBs if you want to open it up in Visual Studio and get source code alignment.
So you don't need them, but they help if you've got them. Okay. There was another question. I can't find it. I should have done this better. I'm sorry. I know previous years you had really good panel leaders. This year you're stuck with me. Oh, this is the one. This is Frans. So what if the companies that you find breaches in, and if they don't care, what do you do? If they don't pay or don't, do you just follow up with a blog post and shame them?
Yeah, exactly. Like shame and blame. It depends. I've done that a few times. Works very effectively. It's like called full disclosure often. So yes, that works. Sometimes you don't do anything, unfortunately, depending on the company. But I always try to like get help from people. So there's a bunch of ways of actually getting help, getting something solved. It could be with like CertCC or EFF, for example. You can go other ways to actually get in contact with the proper. Like most often, it doesn't have anything to do with the person in charge of the problem says no. It's basically you're not able to reach the person at all, and the person that you reach, they're like, no, we don't care. So that's basically the most common problem.
Can I just ask you a question then?
Yeah.
So, has it ever happened
Who's asking the questions here?
I'm asking the question now. I've got the mic.
Okay.
Has any of these companies you've ever contacted turned around and threatened legal action? And do you think you really have any liability? Are you worried about that?
I was worried in the beginning. I've stopped being worried because I really know when to stop. And it doesn't make sense for any of these companies putting out a policy to break it just because I've been following it. So it doesn't really make sense. And I also think that I have the possibility to actually get out there and talk about if that issue would happen. But what happened one time was that I got like credentials for a production database. And instead of screaming to them, oh, this is urgent, I wanted to see like, are they actually the production database credentials? And so I tried them, and I saw the database, like I saw the tables and the databases, and I sent them an email, and they were like, yeah, so the legal team is like, yeah, you saw our database. We don't know how much you saw. And I was like, yeah, I did this and that. And they were like, okay, so you need to sign this NDA, but if you sign this NDA, we will give you money. So I signed the NDA because I hadn't seen anything. So, and I wasn't actually gagballed to not talk about the NDA either. So, but in that case, it didn't feel threatening. It was just that they had to do it. Their legal team was like, we really want to be safe. But no, not yet. Like, I'm crossing my fingers. But it's like I know people that has gone into really big troubles. But that's because they were like, okay, so I found this issue, but I used the issue further and like got in and got like, I was a system administrator and like, you don't do that, you stop. Like, you want to sleep at night. That basically is the...
It's not because it's wrong, it's because you want to sleep at night.
Yeah, you want to sleep at night and you don't want to get woken up by...
And it's not because you can't sleep because you feel bad for what you did. You're
no.
talking about SWAT and
somebody,
your apartment.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Correct.
Sweet. And also, everyone working at companies where you force people to sign NDAs, you should all learn of what he just said. When you force somebody to sign an NDA, give them money. I like that idea.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is for Steve. This is interesting because I like this one. This is going to be scary, and I know it's not your fault, but I'm going to shove it your way anyway. Can you elaborate on the decision to drop Project JSON for an ASP.NET Core?
Oh, yay, great. Okay, so I'm not really part of the group that made that decision, and I certainly don't know all the details of what went on here, but the story that we hear, which is consistent with what is said publicly, is that basically so many customers said they wanted that. There's a huge investment that a very large number of customers have in CS Proj, and there's tons of tools that have been written around it, and loads of people's build systems and all kinds of stuff that they just did not want to stop working. And so what would have been the benefit of switching to Project JSON anyway? Well, I guess we get JSON syntax, and that's a bit cooler now than XML. But apart from that, what can it do that MS Build could not do? Well, nothing really, because MS Build has been enhanced in many ways. It's also cross-platform, it's open source, it's much more powerful than Project JSON was going to be. Most people probably don't like the syntax as much as they like the Project JSON one, but apart from that, what would have been the argument for making everyone move to Project JSON? Probably not that strong. It was really only web developers that were hugely into the whole Project JSON thing, and almost everyone else was not. So that, as I understand it, was the set of trade-offs, and it was reasonably compelling to stick with CS Proj based on that. But if anyone has any other questions or disagreements, then let us know.
Don't tell him. Kind of as you say as well. I think the questions I get about it when I talk about it is the fact that there was also a few comments being made in the early days of ASP.NET Core that we don't like CS Proj, we're changing to JSON, and then all of a sudden they come back and say, by the way, we're not doing JSON. So maybe messaging was a little bit off on that one, but it'll be fine, obviously, in some way. I had a question to Shawn here regarding. No, it's actually, it was quite easy, but it's quite an interesting question, if I can find it. What's the reason why you don't define global routes for MVC in core apps?
I do define global routes. I don't write them in front of audience of 400 because I always mistype them. So, In most of my projects, there's a couple of global routes, and then there are attributed routes for many of the exceptions. And in APIs, I usually use the attributed routes pretty uniformly instead of the global routes because I need them.
Yeah, I agree. And also, the rest of the panel, you're more than welcome to chime in. It's not like, even if I point out
you're
somebody.
wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I would actually like to chime in on that last question
Yes.
about Project JSON, because my only issue with going from Project JSON to CS Proj has nothing to do with format. It's that they haven't quite, and I'm hoping they'll get there, and I'm not asking Steve to promise anything, is that we've lost some of the functionality in that being able to discover packages through IntelliSense and those sorts of things. I was always the advocate of CS Proj, except let's do a NuGet.json file for the dependencies, but they didn't like that idea, so I lost.
So, being that I haven't actually had time to look at VS 2017 and the new tooling, is there IntelliSense inside of the CS Proj stuff at all?
No. Nope.
So CS Proj kind of sucks.
So
Project JSON is the way to go, everyone. You don't want to do... it will be there, I guess.
The suggestion is to use Visual Studio, to use the UI tools, and the UI tools will do the work for you.
Okay. Nobody wants to talk to you, Maarten. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is.
Wait, is Maarten up here?
Yeah. There's so many questions just pouring in right now.
You asked.
Yes, which is good. This is an interesting question. I like that question as well. And I'm going to keep questions to you guys and keep myself out of harm's way. What is your best strategy to budget time between career, private projects, learn new skills, friends, sleep, staying sane?
I think not staying sane.
You can't have them all, you just remove that one.
No, it's really difficult, and it's a thin line to always, which you basically always have to balance. So a good example would be I'm leaving tomorrow at an insanely stupid early hour because I wanted to get home. So thanks organizers for booking my flight at 6 a.m. in the morning. And I was stupid enough to say, sounds fine, I only have to get up at 6 a.m. But yeah, that's the sacrifice, I guess, to do both the conference and have some private time as well.
The rest of you guys, how do you do it? Because I can't get it to work.
So the way I do it is I do my personal projects at work, and then I somehow make them into my work. Not true story, I do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say a similar thing, really. It's I know that not everyone has the luxury of choosing whatever job they want, but if you can find a way, even if it takes you years, to get into a job that gets you working on stuff that you're really interested in, that will cover a significant portion of what you want to do. And yeah, I think that helps a lot. It certainly has done for me.
For me, it's been not having kids. If you don't have kids, you have way more time, and my wife may differ with that opinion. But I get bored so easily that it all sort of gets muddled in the middle, and I try to find the things that entertain me the most or are the edge cases that I care about, and again, don't have kids.
Yeah, so when Shawn comes home and it's like, honey, we should have kids, it's like, no, new version of No Doubts. We'll just postpone that a little bit. Now, no, new version of Visual Studio, can't have kids. But it's kind of true, though. I do agree, I don't have kids either. It's supposed to give me loads of time, but there's just never enough time.
Kids are awesome. Like my ability to be effective got increased when getting a kid. But I was lucky. She slept really good. She slept a lot. But it makes you focus more when you have the time. So when she starts sleeping, you need to be effective, and you need to do stuff forcing you to do stuff. So I would say it's awesome.
And then I would say from the age of around 8, you can get them to do your work.
Smart.
Oh, child labor is another one. So
Yeah.
if you're willing to take the investment of not having time up until apparently, according to Tess, the age of about 8, you will then have a child laborer for you. So all the things you need to do at home, you can just outsource, and you will have loads of time.
Update passwords in the password manager, update software, like all of those things you can just teach your kids to do.
And QA testing, I've been told.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually gave I had to test a pad, like an Android pad, and I had to look for race conditions. And that means basically like trying stress test this, or stress test it. And I gave it to my kid, and she was like playing with it, and suddenly some menu pops up that I've never seen before. I've not been able to like reproduce it. Like, it's hard to write like how to reproduce. Give it to your 3-year-old. Like, that doesn't work. It's like the same error reports that Tess got. But yeah, but that was awesome. It actually works. QA, absolutely.
I'm having kids. Oops. I used to have a phone. I like these sort of soft questions. They're interesting. I'm gonna make this a little bit shorter, but basically for everyone here, have you ever just thought, pardon my French, but fuck it and give everything up and just go and do something else? That wasn't that. I'm paraphrasing. Whoever wrote it, no, there wasn't a fuck in there, but I kind of felt it needed to be there.
I started software development, I think before most of you guys were alive, but back in '85, I got hired at my first job. And in '89, I decided to say fuck it, and I ran away from home for 2 years. And then, of course, the passion came back and all of that. So, again, I didn't have kids. I was leaving for 2 years. But, yeah, I think a lot of people, if given the opportunity, they should do it.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I typically have those when you have one of those bugs that you struggle with for an entire day, and typically the stupid things, like the one we were discussing over lunch today, where you would open a certificate in Internet Explorer, copy the thumbprint, then paste it into some configuration file, and then have your software fail because there's a hidden 4-character or hidden white space at the end of that thing.
And those are how Shawn just goes, yep, been there, done that.
Those are typically the moments where you spend like an entire day searching for the stupidest thing, and at the end of the day, you're happy you found a solution if you found it, and willing to give up and go and breed some llamas or whatever and do something else.
And that was actually interesting because this week has been a sad week for the cloud in general. Like, you had S3 going down, and then the day after, Heroku goes down. And I wanted to like correlate that with how many people that just quit their job and started a food truck or something this week, just to see like how many that actually just, fuck it, I'm leaving. We can't do this.
I love how you went food truck.
Of course.
There's on a daily basis. Considering, no, I know you're laughing, but I'm 100% serious. I've been trying to get out of this freaking business for 12 years. Yeah. Latest one is a food truck.
But you know the taco truck paradox, right?
No?
So the taco truck paradox says basically that you work like a developer or whatever so much that you're like, oh, I wish I had a food truck. And then you start thinking about how you can renew the food truck industry and like be really on edge. And then you realize that you will never not be able to make your life complicated. So you stop thinking about the food truck and then go back to work. That's the taco truck paradox.
Yeah, okay.
That you always complicate your life too much, even though you have a food truck. So it's...
True.
Sorry for breaking your dreams.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just going to go home now, and I'm sad. However, I was going to do a food truck with nitrogen ice cream, so...
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be just your average food truck.
Prove my point.
Just nitrogen ice cream, yeah.
Just nitrogen ice cream and chocolate. Yeah, I'm a weird person, I know, sorry. What else have we got? This is interesting. I talked to Tess a little bit about it regarding reading things. First of all, do people in the panel actually read books on software development? IT books?
These days? Books?
Yeah. Kindle is okay. It can be an e-book, but I'm talking written word.
I don't read like technology-specific books much anymore. I'll read like sort of industry books or time management or those sorts of books. But I don't prioritize books anymore. I mean, the last 2 books I wrote, I think sold 500 copies total. I gave up on books being real anymore, so I read a lot of blogs, though.
Okay, some blogs. Anyone read IT books?
Well, soft skill books I read, and then I read UX design books, like Dan Norman's The Design of Everyday Things, or Making Things Work, like awesome books on do's and don'ts in UX design. That's the only kind of IT books I read.
So just for fun, in the audience, if you can do a hand exercise because you're falling asleep, how many of you read tech books on a regular basis? That's a pretty significant amount. So you should go back to writing books. No, okay. How many of you have never read an IT book or a tech book? A few, and me. Okay, because the question was quite interesting. The question was, what is the best IT book you read and recommended to others in 2016? And in considering this, I'm gonna change the question and say, what's the best IT book you have read and would recommend to anyone today? If you were forced at gunpoint to recommend a computer book, which one would you recommend? Frans? Well, you actually recommended one in your talk.
Yeah. Absolutely. But that's very specific to breaking stuff. So you said software development, and I was
okay, so
breaking
IT, sorry,
software.
I'm a developer. IT in general.
Yeah. So that's an awesome book to get started. What it does is basically what the hell is this thing that people are doing with companies that they don't work for? So that's an awesome first step of doing stuff. But as Shawn said, I read so much. I probably read a book every day, but it's not a book. It's on blog posts or discussions around stuff. So I would say I learn a lot from also interact with people while reading and talking with people reading the same thing. You don't really get that with a book, the same thing that but it's a different length, it's a different format. But I really interact a lot with people reading something, and I really want them to align with me in terms of where they are and what we're discussing. So the format of short stories, aka blogs, is really good for me. It's very effective.
It just feels like technology is changing so fast that a book is it takes too long to get a book.
It's outdated when it's published. Yeah, absolutely.
No, before it's published.
Yeah, before it's published even. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I read some. I read a good book on Elixir, getting started with Elixir. That guy was really writing it in a good way. But you can also feel in that one, even though it's quite new, that he's talking about how it is right now, but he knows that when you read it, that's not the same thing anymore. But he knew that, and that was unique to me to actually see that he's realizing that his book is going to be outdated as soon as someone reads it.
No one else? Shawn, any good books?
Well, I actually went back and read a bunch of Unix books because that stuff still works. And I didn't grow up with Unix. I grew up with DOS and PCs and all this. And so it was weird to me. Rob Connery has this new book that I've been suggesting to a lot of people, and it's the Imposter Syndrome's Book 2, Software Development. I don't remember the title. You're going to have to look up Rob Connery. He talks about it a lot. But he talks about these skills that were valid in '77 that still work, right? The really understanding command line and how it works. And now that Bash is in Windows, as well as when you're on a Mac, or as well as when you're on a Linux, now that we're really in a cross-plat world, or at least in core you are, it's been way more valuable than any of the new tech, to be perfectly honest.
Maarten, no books?
The last book I actually read was Lucene in Action, so a book on Java technology. But that was because I was building a search engine and I could not, there were a lot of blog posts that were doing crazy stuff that didn't work. So I decided, okay, this book is written by a guy who actually wrote part of the Lucene search engine, so let's maybe read that one, and it was a good one. But I wouldn't recommend it as, something you would read as a bedside story.
It's quite interesting to me, if I'm not going to actually answer something on my own, the fact that I feel that Microsoft developers, we have so much good tooling and so much good stuff coming out of Microsoft that actually writing code is not hard. And we tend to just jump straight into stuff. Somebody mentions a NuGet package, we download the NuGet package, we start messing around with it, we look at 1 or 2 little samples, and then we just chug along trying things out. I've quite recently realized that if you actually read the docs, you actually understand what you're doing. It kind of helps once in a while. It might have been that the rest of the world has understood that.
What are docs?
Yeah.
I thought the GitHub repository.
Oh yeah,
just
yeah. No, don't even go there. Don't call open source software documentation because you have the code. That's just no.
It worked for me in ATL years ago, and I've stuck with it.
No, yeah. If I'm going to recommend a book, weirdly enough, I'm actually going to go really, really old, and I'm going to say Domain-Driven Design by Eric Evans.
That's a great book.
So it doesn't have to be necessarily new books. There's so much stuff that you can learn from really old books.
Code Complete as well. I mean, even though it was written in sort of a waterfall world, there's so many little things that you learn on how to working with teams and planning, and that I still go back to it all the time.
And being that it's waterfall is not a problem because everyone is doing Scrummerfall anyway, which is basically we do waterfall, but we add sprints and we stand up in the morning and say hi, and then we're doing agile, right?
So Chris, I thought you were going to recommend Uncle Bob's Clean Coder.
Yeah, no, well, let's not go into that one. Yeah, nope. It's probably a great book, but nope. I have some opinions regarding TDD, and me and Uncle Bob don't really. He's probably a really great guy, but I just don't see eye to eye with him regarding some things. What else have we got? Everything. There's like specific, really simple ones. This is kind of you, Maarten. In 2 years' time, Docker or Service Fabric?
I would personally say Service Fabric because it's a methodology, and Docker is really technological. So Docker is really a product. Service Fabric, I know it is a product as well that you would install, but the mindset of having these little services that run co-located on one machine and so on, it almost sounds like Docker, but I think it's much more portable in the long term. At least the concept is much more portable.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Opinions? How many of you guys are actually doing Docker stuff? For reals? Yeah, so how many of you doing Docker? Whoa, for real in production? Hell no. Not touching that. Yeah.
I teach for a living. I don't
okay.
They don't let me near servers. Come on.
I used to do that as well. It's awesome teaching. There are never any obstacles, and whenever anything fails, you just get a new VM and you're good. Yeah.
But I met a guy, he was putting all the applications in Docker containers. So he had ran Vim in a Docker container. And he made an alias, Vim alias, was actually running a Docker container. So he was like containerized, like it sounds like CubeOS almost, but it was like he was containerizing everything. I don't do that, so.
Yeah, okay, so you're not doing it for real. Unless you put everything in a container, you're not doing it for real. Okay.
But so I do think containers or Service Fabric should mean because we have to stop managing and caring about the OS. This has been something I've been passionate about for a while. Because it reminds me back of when we cared about memory management, right? And at some point we trusted that memory management would be there. And staying away from the OS level and the OS level patching stuff is going to make us able to create better services in general. And so if you're not looking at any of these, it's time to start, because you don't want to manage your own VMs.
So audience-wise, how many of you guys are doing... Okay, so let's start with how many of you are playing around and trying Docker out? And then if you keep your hands up, how many are running Docker in production? Okay. How many of you are planning on running Docker in production?
So nobody's using like Kubernetes and
Docker Swarm.
You
or-
should
Container
start
engine
using
or-
Docker in production because this week they released Docker for Enterprise, so it's ready.
It's
done. Yeah.
Okay. Just a question: is anyone really seriously? Is anyone planning on running Docker in production? Not a single hand. I do see like half a hand. So just freak it up with it. If you're yes, sweet. So now I'm gonna attack you. So no, I'm not. I'm just because the next thing with Docker, I find Docker quite interesting. But then everyone who I hear is like, oh, so we're running one Docker app in one container on one VM. And we have multiple VMs with one container in each. It's like, why would you even go and do that? And also, being a non-Docker person, any opinions on why I would go Docker or instead of just doing web apps in Azure? Because Azure Web Apps gives me the same abstraction from the OS as Docker.
What you're missing there, though, is with something like Docker, and I don't know enough about Service Fabric to speak about it, but in Docker is you're able to build up these systems with inheritance at the service level, and that's really important to me. In that, the idea that I need this certain piece in part of my system, I'm never having to sort of build these pieces out, and that makes it much more effective. I think an audience like this haven't touched a lot of Docker because Docker containers in Windows are incredibly new, right? If you had the same discussion at a Node or at a Python conference, I think half the hands would be up. And that's just the reality that it's hard until recently with things like Core to run a lot of production stuff on Linux.
Yep.
So about the fact that you can inherit containers and stuff like that, that's an interesting one, but I'm not sure if it's the correct way of doing things. Because we've seen that in software development as well, where you get inheritance versus composition. And I'm a big proponent of composition, which Service Fabric actually gives you.
And there were also problems like Heartbleed issues, having problems because of interdependencies with one of the containers being vulnerable, and it was like the tree of dependence.
Yeah.
So there were people being vulnerable for longer than needed just because there were dependencies in Docker that wasn't updated. So I absolutely agree on that. I do, however, see like all these like container engine and Kubernetes that like runs Docker images being like one way of actually running it in production. But I think the whole idea about I lost it. I lost the idea. The whole idea about I don't remember is I don't remember.
The thing that all of these ideas about, microservices or Docker images or any of these brings us is to start thinking about state in our applications. Because one of the things when people start to move applications in, they realize, oh, every time I restart Docker, my file system's new. So all that stuff I thought I was saving to disk is gone. And to really start thinking about, oh, this really is stateless, not like sort of stateless. Just because I don't have session state doesn't mean I'm stateless, right? And that's what we keep on sort of burying down into stateless, and we're at a point where we're going to have to actually do it and start to gain the benefits of it.
So, okay. Cool. Yeah. I'm not going to do Docker for a while until somebody tells me how to do it properly. No, it's just, yeah, Docker is interesting. It's just that the demos you see is, let's do one Docker thing and throw it up and look at that. I can reach it on the port. And then once you take it beyond that, you end up with, oh, I need networking communication, and I need this, and I need service discoverability and everything. So, yeah. I'm putting my money on Service Fabric as well, but that's me.
Yeah, so now I remember the answer to your question of
Ta-da!
Azure. Yeah, ta-da! Yeah, you said why doesn't like Azure solves all the problems, and I think that's the lock-in thing. So that locks you into Azure, and Docker doesn't really lock you into anything really. Kind
of yes and no. No, it doesn't lock you in with Docker, but actually deploying a web app to Azure is just an MVC app. It doesn't really lock you in because there's.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, you're dependent on just Azure online, like.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yes, you can say as much as you want.
If you're running an ASP.NET Core app on Windows today, I suggest everyone try it in a Linux Docker once just to see all the case sensitivity problems that you have.
Yes.
I tried to do it with Wilderbog, and I was amazed at how much the case didn't matter in my own mind, but it was broken everywhere.
Yeah, so even I have actually tried pushing something to a Docker container. It's actually worth spending an hour or so trying it out, or maybe an afternoon or whatever, just to see where it is, so that when everybody says Docker, you know what it is. This just me. There's beer, by the way.
Yes, there is.
Drink beer. Interesting question. There was something. This one I love. This is for the whole panel. I want everyone to answer except me. What was your biggest, most spectacular fuck up in production, and how did you deal with it? Do you need a minute to? Because I know a guy. I can tell a story about a guy, not me. If you need now a minute to think. Or you good?
I'll confess. So I started being a consultant, and I was at an internet provider in the Netherlands, working for them. And at one point, I was just doing some database stuff, and I thought that I was logged into development, but apparently I was logged into production, which didn't really matter, because usually what we would do was always start a transaction, and whatever you would do was always running a transaction, except this time. And a delete without a where clause of all subscription data apparently was not the best idea. Luckily, like 10 minutes before I ran that command, there was a backup of the database. So I called the sysadmins and was like, dudes, restore now. So yeah, we lost 10 minutes of data, and that was a very scary moment.
Okay, that's a pretty good one.
I was working for a company that made forums, and they had brought me on to write this multi-threaded email processor. Basically, I was going to read from a queue and try to send emails out faster than they were able to by just sending them straight to SMTP. And I thought, okay, great. And I wrote this test of trying to send 10 million emails, and I sent them all to the CEO's name, because I thought that, because I had a dummy server that wasn't supposed to send them. Yeah. He got them all. He got them all.
He read them all.
I don't think he read them all.
Okay. Tess?
So I'm going to be super boring and say I fix other people's mess ups instead, because
Yeah, your situation is a little bit different. But to be honest, you're still, yeah, okay. You're not getting off the hook. You need to say something.
okay, I need to figure something out then.
Okay then, well, the most memorable thing for me is, again, arguably it wasn't my fault, or at least I would like to, to say that, because I didn't originally make this happen, but I should have spotted it. So when I was working on the Azure Management Portal, the new one, the blue one with all the blades and all that, I was on a team that was at that time responsible for the servicing of the portal. So, and I was on call. So for that whole week, if anything went wrong, I was going to be the one who got phoned up about it and made to stay up all night to fix it. And at one point, a report came in that our telemetry was telling us that it was taking longer than usual for people to load the portal. And I thought, oh, that's not really very serious, is it? I don't really care. But anyway, these messages kept on coming in saying, oh, yeah, it's really taking a long time. Average load times are going up and up and up. So I started looking into it, and I couldn't really see anything wrong. I spent more and more time on it. I spent an entire day developing more and more elaborate ways of trying to figure out why it was taking a long time. And then when I eventually spotted the thing, it was such a face-palmy kind of thing, because if I just opened my browser's network tab even once, I would have seen what I should have seen in the beginning, which is that somebody on some team that I won't mention had somehow managed to embed an 11 megabyte MPEG into the home screen of the Azure Management Portal. So every single time anyone went there, it was then downloading this 11 megabytes. And you can imagine how devastating that was for performance. And yeah, it took me an entire day just to spot this unbelievably obvious thing and pull it out.
Yeah, so 8 years ago I worked with television, and we broadcasted when Obama got elected. And the idea was that in Sweden we had this program with a 3D map of the United States. And what happened was that we got feeds from Associated Press. And we had to read those feeds and then calculate if they would be red or blue. And I used Firebird database. Yeah.
So if you guys in the back didn't hear that, we were laughing because there's like a pretty obvious response to use of the database.
Yeah, so we did that because we were like, yeah, that company was doing Delphi, so Firebird was awesome. Yeah, exactly. And we started to getting some issues because the map wasn't updating, and suddenly we realized like the database doesn't work. Like it gets read locks because of we're trying to get the data in. Doesn't work. The producer gets so mad because the map starts flickering and it's like everything just breaks down, and he takes his headphones and just slam them in the floor and just walk out of the bus. And I was like, I need to do something. So I actually, this is maybe not a fuck up, but I actually switched to my sequel during the broadcast. So, and the cool thing was that and I was like importing it into that one instead. And I think it was like 4 o'clock or something in the morning. I was able to switch it out to my sequel instead. And that was 10 minutes before like everything lit up and being like red and Obama won. So that was like the only, like those 10 minutes was the only 10 minutes working for the whole complete night. And yeah, Firebird, I hate Firebird.
Did you all see how Frans made that look like a mistake and then almost all the way through go,
yes.
Oh shit, I'm telling you how awesome I am?
I actually saved the world, but I got fired. Yeah, I forgot to say that, I got fired. The thing was,
Karma.
I had a week, okay, here's the bad thing. I had a week before to prepare and to test with Associated Press. Did not do it, because Firebird rocks, right? So I do not work there anymore.
Okay, so I will give you the story of my friend. And this is actually my friend. No, there's not actually air quotes. I was involved. I was on the project and I might have potentially had, I don't know, not checked the code that you checked in, but this was around 2000. We were running an online sports betting application. And we launched this new feature where when you made a bet, you could tick a box and you would get an SMS notifying you whether you won or lost, which was a sweet feature. And they actually had to pay for it because sending text messages was expensive. So we would actually deduct some money from their account. And this developer builds this thing and sends it off into production. And everything is fine. And then the bookie, he basically goes in and sets the result in one match. And the machine just goes... And we're like, what the hell just happened? It just completely died on us. And it's like, I went in and looked at the machine. It's like, this looks exactly like an infinite loop. So if you've ever built stuff in VB and classical ASP, in VB, the ADO stack, you used to have a record set.move next. So you would do while, not, RS, EOF, and then you would do whatever you needed, and then at the end you needed to add move to the next record. Otherwise it was basically while true with one record. Apparently that he didn't think the RS move next was important. So it took a little while to figure out what was happening, and the machine was kind of dying. So we had to call. We couldn't even get into it through VNC, so we had to call the supplier, actually the hosting company, to go in and physically, basically either pull the plug or hold the power button to basically cycle the machine. And then somebody goes, wait, that was sending text messages to one record in an infinite loop for a pretty long time. So we called up the telco and basically said, we had a minor mishap. And they're like, what? Well, we kind of might have sent a few too many text messages. And they're like, yeah, let's check the queue. Oh, yes, you did. Yes. We'll just stop those. So they canceled it. And they're like, no, that's fine. We managed to cancel most of them. But you did send out about 4,500 text messages. So there was this probably a little guy in, I think it was Italian, because we knew who it was. There's like this one guy who made the bet. He got 4,000 something messages saying that he lost the bet. To a, like, probably... That's really rubbing it in. Yeah, that's rubbing it in. It's like... and also the fact that, remember in 2000, you would have like a little Nokia phone with very limited memory. So it would have gone beep, 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 until it was full. So he would go through, and every time he removed one, it would just go beep, beep again, and he would get another one. And also, yeah, on top of that, he apparently, the RS Move next thing was independent of actually deducting money from his account as well. So he was also owing us a bunch of money according to the website. So, yeah, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Promise. It's a cool story, though. It's great telling it, because I didn't do it. I also used to work with a couple of guys who did software for heart pacemakers. And they rewrote sort of some abstract thing inside, or something inside of it that would mention, basically they broke a 6,000 euro pacemaker machine in the first 15 minutes of the project. Yeah, not great either. So the database thing it happens to us all. Have you found one? Tess has not made any bad judgment calls, never caused any problems in a...
Yet.
Well, they're too severe to
karma,
admit.
you know.
Karma, yeah. spelled B-I-T-C-H. Okay. We had another one here. It wasn't the one that dropped it all. I like this one. Could artificial intelligent computers replace programmers in the future? Your thoughts, hopes, and fears. I'm terrified. Not about that. I'm terrified of AI in general. Have you seen the Boston Dynamic robots, the little dogs that walk around and carry things? In every single video, there's a dude kicking it. As soon as a computer gets notion of self, and it's going to go to YouTube, and once it's done with all the cat videos, it's going to go straight to that, and then figure out that we've been kicking his kids, whatever, grandparents, or whatever you want to call it, for ages. It's not going to be good. But replacing developers, is that going to happen?
I don't see why not, on principle. I mean, it's a scary thought, but yeah, why not?
I'm kind of scared too, because what that artificial intelligence might do is what we all do, copy and paste code from Stack Overflow.
So it doesn't need... Okay. So, yeah. It won't be dangerous until we get an AI computer that can post to Stack Overflow as well.
There's a great Visual Studio add-in you can get that will, when you get an error, they will put into the copy buffer an answer from Stack, the first answer they find from Stack Overflow with the error message. Yeah, please don't use that. I'm not really scared about AIs taking over. I think they will help us, but that's probably because 25 years ago, Mary Jo Foley wrote an article about secretaries being able to write software by dragging and dropping, right?
Yeah.
There's always someone that's going to say, will they be able to replace us? And when they replace us, there's going to be that level on top of like architecting a system or figuring out how systems connect.
Completely agree,
Yeah.
because, for example, in the field I was talking about, debugging, we've kind of automated ourselves out of a job with debug diag, essentially. And we're doing that all the time in software, and it only becomes another more interesting problem that we get to solve when we don't have to repeat ourselves all the time.
Yeah, we're just going higher and higher in the stack, and hopefully, I'm certainly having more fun now than when I was debugging ATL COM objects in memory crashes. A lot more fun.
So, okay. It wasn't a uniform yes or no. There was one, like, yes.
A uniform meh.
Yeah, uniform meh. We're just going to go with that one.
By the time it happens, we'll all be dead anyway. So
I'm not so sure about that, though. If I'm going to weigh in on the subject, I saw some graph saying that if you look at processing powers today, we're at the level of a rat's brain. But by 2020, we're looking at being able to process basically process the same amount as a human brain. And if you're looking at processor and actually computing speeds going up in that direction, we can do a whole bunch of different things. So I'm not sure that we're saying we'll all be dead by then, unless we are talking Skynet. So.
Well, as the only American on the panel, I don't think we're going to make it to 2020
Oh,
with the American president anyway.
Yeah, so yeah. Speaking of elections and red and things like that, yeah.
This is being broadcast, isn't it?
Yes. You're not going to be welcome home.
I'm not going to get back through the border, I think.
Unless you can balance a binary tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Have
so
you guys
we've
heard
heard.
that? Seriously, have you heard that to be able to get in to the US as a software developer from certain countries, they will ask you if you can balance a binary tree at the border?
And I don't remember how to do that.
Remember? I've never been taught.
What's a binary tree?
I'm screwed. I'm going to go install Webpack. What else have we got? Oh, npm install binary tree, require binary tree.balance. You're all now welcome to the US. We've just taught you how to do it.
That's probably not true.
Okay, you're not all, apparently the American says that you're not all welcome to the US. Is Microsoft doing open source the right way? I'm going to back that question. What is the right way? Is Microsoft at least trying to do it in a nice way? Are they on the right track?
I think they're on the right track because they're actually interacting with people with issues on GitHub. They're accepting pull requests. They're, you know, I certainly don't think they're perfect in that way. But I interviewed Mr. Xamarin. Why can't I think of his name all of a sudden?
Miguel?
Miguel. Right after Xamarin had been acquired, and he told this story about before the acquisition went through, he had a meeting where they said, you know, Miguel, you're going to have to open source all of your code if you come and join us. Which he said, I spent 20 years trying to get Microsoft to open source their code, and for me to join them, I have to open source Xamarin and the IDE stuff and all of it was just sort of to me, the symbol of how much it's changed.
Yeah, totally. Well, things have come on a long way. If you think back to when did the whole open source push start? Maybe around about 2006, 2007 or something like that. That was sort of the era where you would start being able to see the source code for some stuff. It was the whole see but don't touch it era. And then you'd have some of the teams that were at the forefront of things who finally started doing real open source, like about, I don't know, 2010 or something like that, where we could actually start taking some contributions back. And then that whole mindset has grown virally throughout the whole company. And since Satya came in and became the CEO, it's very much the default now. You'd have to make a good case for not open sourcing some sort of developer tool or library now. And you generally won't find any developers who, for some reason, don't want to do that. So, yeah, it's certainly a default way of doing things now.
Yeah, and I don't know what to say. I find it good, and I think this is a learning curve, and I think that they're doing everything they can to learn, at least, as compared to some other projects out there that doesn't even want to learn and just treat people like crap in the repos. So,
and I think that's shown in sort of the boomerang experience, which is that a lot of people that left when things were so closed down sourced because they felt like they wanted to be on that are now rejoining Microsoft now that they see that they can, you know, have their cake and eat it too, as it were.
and you can actually get stuff in there. I have managed to get a pull request accepted at one point, and if they let me do pull request and accept it, I am pretty sure you can get stuff in there as well.
Now
Yes,
I'm
Chris.
concerned about ASP.NET Core.
Yeah, next comment was going to be, yes, Chris, it was a one-line fix in a sample in beta 3 or something like that, but it's still there. I have a thing in my GitHub account that says that it was accepted into ASP.NET, so I'm happy. We're getting to the end here. I'm going to combine, I like this question, and I want to combine it with one other, and I want to have an answer from all of you guys. It's a whole bunch of questions, but the general gist is, do you still enjoy coding? If yes, what do you enjoy the most? What don't you like about coding? That should be fairly easy to answer. And also, if you guys were going to tell me what to look out for, or what to learn within, say I'm going to go home now and spend 6 months learning something. I'm a slow learner. What would you recommend that I learn for the future? There are a lot of questions, but
That's a boatload of questions.
yeah. Do you like? Do you enjoy coding?
I do enjoy coding a lot. What I do not like and really hate it is fighting tooling. Fighting any framework that forces me to do something in a way that's clearly not the way it's supposed to be, or just fighting broken tooling and broken other things. And of course, the code we write is always perfect.
Okay, and if you're going to tell somebody to go and learn something, what would you recommend?
I would say all of the new .NET Core stuff is definitely interesting, but more other than that, things like microservices, things like SOA, they are all sort of cyclic, and they seem to come back after a while. So my advice would be to just look into what's out there now, and in 20 years you'll still have a job and you'll still be doing the same thing with a new fancy name.
Yeah, and if you want to have work now, just go back 8 or 10 years in time and look. So go back, Google, and look at blogs, what happened 8 years ago, and pick up that. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I still do enjoy coding a lot. But what I don't like about it is I look at myself very critically when I don't get something. And my first instinct is to say, this was designed badly. And then at some point I get over that hump and I'm like, oh, I didn't understand what they were doing. And that self-knowledge really, because I can feel it when it's happening, and my wife can see it on my face when I'm like, and so that's the part. But the thing I like more than coding and what we do is learning. And I just feel like our jobs are just to learn whatever it is that's coming down the pike. What I would learn now if I had 6 months, that's tough.
Knitting.
I'm in the middle of ASP.NET Core, so I have I've got a lot of stake there. But I'm seeing a lot of really interesting things with microcontrollers and IoT that are either going to break our whole world or allow us to do some very interesting things. My wife did request the internet-connected crock pot, so she could turn it on in the middle of the day.
Slightly more useful than my internet connected or my Bluetooth connected sous vide machine that tells me the temperature, which is supposed to be
She already has that, and she loves it.
Okay.
And she loves it, yeah.
Tess.
So I like coding too, and what I hate is when...
Please say debugging.
No, I hate debugging. No, I hate it when people change their minds about what they want in the project after
She doesn't like clients.
Yeah, no, well, maybe that's it. And what I would learn if I had half a year, and I do, is I'm doing a lot of bot stuff and I'm doing a lot of machine learning stuff, because I think that's, at least right now, that feels like the right way to go.
Cool. Okay, so yes, I do still enjoy coding. What I really enjoy about it is the creative aspect, the sort of pushing forward the boundaries of what I personally know, and sometimes pushing back the boundaries of what other people can do as well, which is really exciting. So I suppose what I don't like is sort of the opposite of that, which is when I have to go back and just like fill in all the boring details and make it actually work in all scenarios and care about other people's obscure requirements and things like that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I just want to do my own cool stuff. And if I had a load of time to learn, then, yeah, like Tess, I think I would probably focus on machine learning. That's certainly like a kind of gold rush technology at the moment. But since that's already been mentioned, the other thing that I would totally recommend getting into is game development, because it is so much fun, particularly if you spend all of your working life making like forms and validation and database migrations and stuff. And then instead of that, you could be building virtual worlds and making things feel really fun to play and thinking about low-level performance stuff and working with GPU code and stuff. It's great, and I definitely recommend that.
Yes, I do programming, and I enjoy it, and I hate it sometimes, but I actually enjoy it a lot also. Like, the most fascinating thing for me is that when you get to like do something new, or like a new project. I love that thing, because you have a clear, like, I only want this. When I do this like this is going to be perfect. It's going to be everything I need. And then when you come to that point, when you have that, then it starts to grow. Like, I've never been able to, like, yep, it's done. That fascinates me a lot. So whenever you come to the point where you know that this was exactly what I anticipated and wanted, you always start growing stuff. And then I can do this, and I can start doing that. And like, I both hate it and love it at the same time.
So basically, the rest of us hate the client. Frans is the client.
Yeah. But I'm doing it myself, like a self-project. Like for my, like, oh, I want to poke with this. And I have a friend doing a game, and he's like, he started like, he don't want to release it really yet, I think. So he started like, okay, I will do my own JSON parser. And I will do my own font kerning. And I'm like, he's been like going down low level, just because he probably enjoys it as much as you say, like just wanna like poke at it. And I would probably like soldering. I would like being really good at it, because I suck at it completely. Like just, it's broken, it's dead. You destroyed the tech completely. So I wanted to learn that more.
Okay.
I just want to add, like, UX and user interfaces in general, I think, is also something that's kind of a forgotten skill in our profession.
It's a forgotten skill that we should let other people do, because developers can't do UX.
So
I know it's fascinating me saying that. We're actually out of time. Yeah, I know, it's been like an hour and 3 minutes. So I thank you all for listening, and I also want to thank, so where are all the organizers? There's very few organizers around. From me, and I assume from the rest of us, to thank you so much for organizing the conference. It's been an awesome conference as usual. And thank you to the audience for attending. And we'll see if you end up having to look at me next year as well. It's getting a little bit scary. But thank you all.
thank you.